under the clear skies. Any showers fading away. And again, just a hint of blue there on the chart, northern England, parts of Scotland. So again, a frosty start for some on Wednesday morning. Again, by and large, another fine day. But again, it will be eastern parts that keep a lot of cloud through the day. Maybe the odd light shower, but the vast majority dry. A brighter day for eastern Scotland, southern Scotland, and some good sunny spells for Wales and the southwest. And again, a bit of sunshine sees those temperatures up into the mid-teens, but the eastern areas staying just 9, 10, 11 Celsius. The high pressure, though, is sticking around, sitting across the UK for much of this week, keeping things largely dry, but with a continued risk of nighttime frost.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A poll suggests that 5 out of 10 households will not be able to pay their bills in a few short months' time. The question I'm asking you tonight is, are you changing your lifestyle already? And that links into a research think tank telling us that Tory voters still want to keep the commitment to net zero. We'll discuss and debate that. We'll go to France. Was Marine Le Pen thoroughly routed, or will the dam burst in 5 years' time? And joining me on Talking Pints, TV star and celebrity Daniela Westbrook. But before all of that, let's get the news.
Nigel, thank you. I'm Polly Middlehurst in the GB newsroom. And the top story tonight. The UK's Defence Secretary says around 15,000 Russian troops have been killed so far since President Vladimir Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine. Ben Wallace made the announcement as he confirmed Britain will be sending more military hardware to the war-torn country, saying supplying more equipment and ammunition to Ukraine is the most efficient way to help push back Russian troops.
Russia has so far failed in nearly every one of its objectives. In recognition of this failure, the Russian High Command has regrouped, reinforced and changed focus. To date, we have provided more than 5,000 anti-tank missiles, 5 air defence systems with more than 100 missiles, 1,360 anti-structural munitions, 4.5 tonnes of plastic explosives.
Meanwhile, throughout the day, Moscow has reportedly been bombarding Ukraine's largest city, Kharkiv, and key infrastructure targets as well. Casualties are also being reported after 5 train stations came under fire across the country, including one on the outskirts of Lviv. Ukraine's military command says Russia is attacking train stations to try to halt arms supplies from arriving from foreign partners. Meanwhile, plans to create a humanitarian corridor from the steel plant in the besieged city of Mariupol have failed today. It's reported around 1,000 people are still sheltering there. Here, police have confirmed 4 victims stabbed to death in southeast London were aged in their 30s, 40s and 60s. The 3 women and 1 man were found with injuries at a home in Bermondsey. A man in his 20s has been arrested on suspicion of murder. It's believed all 5 people knew each other. The Speaker of the House of Commons has requested a meeting with the editor of the Mail on Sunday newspaper. That comes after the paper published what some are calling misogynistic claims about Labour's deputy leader. The Mail on Sunday reported comments by an unnamed Tory MP that Angela Rayner tried to distract Boris Johnson in the Commons by crossing her legs. Twitter is reportedly very close to accepting Elon Musk's $43 billion offer to buy the social media site. The Tesla owner, who's also the world's richest man, has submitted what he calls his best and final offer. Musk says Twitter needs to be taken private to grow and become a genuine platform for free speech. Boris Johnson says it's very important to have a French president who can be relied upon over the war in Ukraine. That comes after Emmanuel Macron beat his right-wing opponent Marine Le Pen in the presidential elections at the weekend. She previously held close ties with Vladimir Putin. Macron took 58% of the vote to secure a second term in office. That's the first French president to do so in 20 years. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now back to Westminster and Nigel Farage.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here in Westminster this evening, and a poll overnight published by the Daily Mirror suggesting that 5 out of 10 people simply don't think they'll be able to afford their bills in a few short months' time. Already, up to 40% of people saying they're struggling meeting their bills. And this is coming in a sort of endless cascade. To begin, of course, we've got food prices. I mean, goodness me, even rationing of sunflower oil in our shops from Saturday. Some stores you can buy 1 bottle, other stores you can buy 2, but Ukraine, of course, a major food producer. So food, the first thing that is rocketing. Going out to eat and drink, the price of that, absolutely rocketing. Taxes, of course, that have gone up this month for the vast majority of working people. And filling up the car. I mean, it's a horror story. It really is pretty frightening for people, let alone household bills, gas and electricity. We really are heading into, without doubt, the most difficult time for people that we've seen in this country, right back to the oil price shock of 1973 and inflation that we had in the mid-1970s. It is a rough, tough, difficult time, and I think there are genuinely millions of people out there, decent people, people who want to pay their bills, want to pay their way, really worried about what's going to happen. Indeed, we even had the boss of Scottish Power last week suggesting that by October, gas bills could be, and I quote, horrific. So we're going into a very, very difficult time. Heating or eating, that's been the debate that's been going on over the course of the last few months, but people are facing, I think, some very, very difficult choices. And politically, for a government in power, that's a problem. For an opposition, it's not easy, because what are their alternatives? How do you bring prices down? How do you deal with the problem of inflation? Well, we could have a lesson on economics and go back to the early 1980s. But even if you take big measures in the economy to deal with inflation, it's at least 18 months, 2 years, maybe longer, before that has any effect. Now, to me, the really big one is energy. And you know my views, regular viewers. I think it's absolute madness that we lump on over 20%, 23% on people's electricity bills for renewable and social obligations. I think the fact we're a massive net importer of energy makes no sense. Oh, there are some that say, Nigel, even if we did produce our own gas, actually that would still be at world markets, none of which explains to me why in America people are paying 50% the price for gas that we are. So that's my big idea. My big idea is that we turn ourselves around, we become a net exporter of energy, and we stop putting up taxes. The tax burden now the highest it's been in 70 years. And I'm not saying that what I'm putting forward is going to solve everyone's problems, but I do at least think it would be a help. So I'm asking you tonight, the audience, how is your lifestyle changing? Are you already making decisions? Maybe it's that far on holiday. And hey, you know what? The pound is now down 10% over the course of the last year. I suspect it'll fall further. People's disposable income is being rapidly reduced. Let me know how your lifestyle is changing. Farage at gbnews.uk. Now, talking of energy, there's a think tank, Onward, and they've produced some figures overnight suggesting that voters, and particularly here Conservative voters, are overwhelmingly in favour of net zero. They even suggest that if the Conservative Party was to ditch that manifesto, they could lose up to 1.3 million votes. Now, I was a little bit surprised by all of this, so I thought the only thing we could possibly do is to ask Ed Burkitt, Head of Energy and Climate at Onward, to come in and talk to me. And Ed, previously working in renewable energy, battery storage, and those kind of things. I guess, with polling, you can sort of produce the answer you want, can't you? I mean, if I'm polling in the north of England on behalf of your think tank, and if I say to people, would you like to see catastrophic climate change? People are going to say, well, no. But equally, if you say to people, we're lumping massive subsidies, and have been for 2 decades, onto their energy bills to subsidised wind technology, then you might get a different answer. So, first, I understand you've laid this out, that Tory voters are committed to net zero, but exactly what did you ask them?
So the first question we asked people is, do you support or oppose the net zero target? And what we found is that 60% of voters across the UK support that target, and that 10% of them oppose that. And there are no massive trends between different groups in terms of one group massively supporting it more than another.
What, you mean Labour or Conservative?
Yeah, exactly. So there is some more support amongst, as you might expect, Labour and Remain.
So the principle that government should be doing something is broadly accepted.
Absolutely, and it is really broad support, and even in the context of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and what that's done to energy prices and the cost of living, we haven't seen any big shift. That we polled before that, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and after the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the numbers that we got back were almost identical. OK. Do people know? Do people really know? Because I genuinely think there's been a conspiracy of silence in Westminster. All the parties have agreed with green subsidies, and all the evidence is that the more we go for renewable, the higher electricity costs become. Do people really know what they've had to pay for this? Because my sense of it, you see, Ed, I asked a crowd this. We were out doing a Farage at Large up in the West Midlands in Dudley, and I asked how many people realised what had been put onto their electricity bills. And I would say 20-25% of the audience had some awareness. The rest hadn't got a clue. So that's my question to you. Do people really realise what they're having to pay? Well, I think it is quite clearly laid out. Perhaps we can make that information clearer to people, but it's all laid out on the Ofgem website, for example.
Oh, yeah. Look, I get my electricity bill through the door or online. It doesn't tell me on that bill what this subsidy does. How many people go to the Ofgem website as a percentage of consumers?
Well, but actually your proposal there is probably quite a good one. I have no issue with breaking down for people how much they are paying on their energy bill for the different elements, like we have with our tax bills now, for example. So that sort of transparency, I don't think there's anything to hide, because what we've seen during the current crisis is that the renewables are providing, in a way, an insurance policy. So the new offshore wind farms that have been built, they have a fixed price. That fixed price is now lower than the market price, and so they are paying money back to people's suppliers and to people's pockets.
That's the theory. That's the theory. We'll see in the end, in practice, how all of this works out. I mean, you know as well as I do, we've been paying rich landowners fortunes just for siting wind turbines on their land. And it's you guys in this renewable club, allied to the Michael Goves and people in the Labour Party, you've put all this upon us without ever telling us the truth. That to me is the fundamental objection here.
Well, I think you've seen broad support from both Labour voters and
because
Conservative
they
voters
don't know they don't know the racket, do they? They don't know what they've been charged.
Well, I have no issue, as you say, with making it more transparent.
But I'm just saying, right now, people do. You know, you can produce this. I understand. I completely understand. If you ask people, you know, do you want the government to be responsible with the environment? You're going to get a positive answer. Of course you are. I'm just arguing that they haven't realised the costs that have been put upon them. But let me ask you a slightly different question. I mean, if you'd asked these people, should the United Kingdom become self-sufficient in energy, I think that too would have got a very positive response. And yet, you know as well as I do, we're importing huge amounts of gas. We're still importing substantial amounts of coal, although I do see that Michael Gove is considering very seriously this Woodhouse colliery in Cumbria being opened. How would you feel about that colliery being opened?
To be honest, I don't feel like it's a big swing on our emissions and the emissions that we have as a country. If it's going to improve our self-sufficiency, it might increase our domestic emissions slightly, but actually it's domestic rather than imported. So in a way, you could argue it would reduce global emissions. But I think the big story on energy is what the government is going to be doing on offshore wind and what the government is going to be doing on nuclear. That's where the big story is here.
But when offshore wind doesn't produce, you need something you can turn on very quickly.
Yeah.
To plug the gap, and gas is by far the best for doing this, whereas nuclear and wind don't go together in the sense that nuclear produces constant energy. And look, I'm pro-nuclear, I'm pro what they're saying, but hey, it's 10 years away, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and actually what you're saying is absolutely right around the role of nuclear energy, which generates all the time, generates electricity all the time, and then you have a mix of wind farms and gas-fired power stations. That's what we have at the moment, and then over time we need to have more of the renewables and less of the gas. But that's where the challenge is going to be. How do we ensure the lights stay on when it's not windy, when there is, when we don't want to use gas?
Should we go on being a big importer of gas, or should we produce our own?
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable expectation for us to say that we do not want to be a big net importer of gas. We're probably never going to be in a position where we're a big net exporter of gas, but I think it's perfectly reasonable for the government to say, as it has done, we are going for net zero, but that's a transition, and as we transition, we want to minimise our imports of fossil fuels.
We're heading towards net zero by not producing our own energy here and by exporting huge numbers of manufacturing jobs. I mean, the fact is the whole thing's a nonsense because global CO2 emissions are not reducing as a result of those two actions. How do we get some common sense into this debate?
Well, so what you're talking about there is moving heavy factories away from the UK to places like China. That is absolutely not the vision of net zero that we should have. And I think that is not the vision that the government has.
It's the reality. You know, Boris Johnson boasts, we've cut carbon emissions more than any other Western country. I think 44% reduction since 1990. But we've done it. The steelworks at Redcar closes and it goes to India. The goods are made in India under lower environmental standards and then exported back to this country. And we think we're doing well.
Yeah, and actually we are probably measuring it the wrong way. We should be measuring the carbon consumption of what we're actually consuming in the UK. So if it's produced here and it's produced lower carbon than it would be abroad, then that should be a net positive to our carbon budget, as it were, rather than a net negative.
Yeah, but can you understand, Ed, why I'm saying to you that I feel this whole thing, this whole debate has been clouded with a complete lack of facts, with virtue signalling from politicians in Westminster without any proper explanation to people. And I want to come back, if I can, to that up to 23% on people's electricity bills. Surely, I'm talking about cost of living here, as you heard before you joined me. If, and it may well be true, if prices keep going the way they are, if 50% of households in a few months' time will be struggling to pay their bills, government has to do something to help people. The most obvious quick way is to remove that 25% add-on.
So I think at the moment, now that prices have gone up, it's no longer 25% because it's stayed constant. So it's £150 a year out of £2,000 a year for the average.
So the percentage is down because the price has gone up.
And because also the cost of the renewables has not changed. So that's a benefit.
But it's still a cost, which we could remove.
So it's an obvious solution. Unfortunately, I don't think it solves the problem. For a start, it's too small. It's only £150 a year.
Well, it would still help.
It would help, but we need something bigger. And secondly, it wouldn't be well targeted. the biggest benefit would go to the people in the biggest houses, who are usually richer, who are consuming more energy. So yes, there absolutely we need to do more on energy bills.
But there are lots of people, lots of retired couples on fixed incomes living in quite big houses who may turn out to be some of the poorest out of all of this.
Well, so we need to identify the poorest and most vulnerable customers, whoever they may be, whether they are retired, whether they're on low incomes, whether they're disabled, whether they're living in leaky, private rented accommodation. Those are the people we need to be targeting.
And what about the 5% VAT? Should we just get rid of that? It was a Brexit promise.
Well, so again, it's small. It's small in comparison to the scale.
I tell you what, if I say to everyone watching this now, you can have 5% off your energy bills, they're going to say, yes, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, and it's a compelling offer, but the question is, could you reduce energy bills by 20% for those who need it most, who are going to be choosing between heating and eating?
Well, on current course, I don't think anything's going to change very much in the short term. Ed, thank you for coming in and joining me, and thanks to Onward for their research, which I find interesting, but I still feel people haven't been told enough. In a moment, we go to Paris. Was it a complete rout for Marine Le Pen? Was it a huge victory for Macron? Or is there something more interesting going on here? Could the dam burst in 5 years' time? Back with you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
As people struggle to pay their household bills, I'm asking you, are you changing your lifestyle? Few are your responses. Philip says, if people have 3 different streaming services, have Sky Q in 4 different rooms, and complain about not being able to pay bills, they need to prioritise their lives and cut back to essentials only. John says, not yet, but it inevitably will. Sacrifices will have to be made. Robert says, no, not at all. Obviously, prices are going up, but I think there is an element of alarmism to this. Well, Robert, it's not alarmism, is it, when the bill lands on the mat? And one viewer says, if so, this is the stuff of revolution. Well, that's a very interesting point, because Martin Lewis, very well-respected commentator on personal and family finance, he actually thinks that this could lead to civil unrest. I'm less sure about that, just because the British don't tend to go to civil unrest very easily. However, there's one country not too far away from us where civil unrest is almost a national sport. It is, of course, France, modern France, founded from the flames of revolution and still prone to a good riot here or there. Now, yesterday was the second round of the French presidential election. Macron getting just over 58% of the vote, Marine Le Pen 41.5% of the vote. I thought what was very interesting was seeing Macron's acceptance speech, his victory party. It all seemed a little bit subdued. And I think the reason for that is nobody would have even believed that a candidate with the name of Le Pen would get more than 4 in 10 French voters to support them. But she did. And it's quite interesting, isn't it? Every time there's a presidential election, we're told that the Front National, as it was, or now the National Rally, we're told that it's peaked. We're told that's the end of it. Well, I'm not so sure. You see, my own personal experience was this. In 1999, when I stood in the European elections and got elected to the European Parliament, UKIP came 4th. In 2004, UKIP came 3rd. In 2009, UKIP came 2nd. And in 2014, UKIP won the European elections, won a national election, and hey presto, we got a referendum, and British politics has fundamentally changed. And many of the barbs that are thrown at Marine Le Pen, and please bear in mind, she does not have the same politics as her father. The BBC this morning was suggesting that she did. It's not right. It's not true. And I just see this steady progression, this disenchantment with the Parisian centralisation, the arrogance, frankly, of Macron and many others. And I would not, for one moment, write off Marine Le Pen getting up to or close to 50% in the next round of the French presidential elections in 5 years' time. Well, one man who was there last night witnessing all of this was GBNews' political editor, Darren McCaffrey, and he joins me now. Darren, good evening. How was last night in Paris?
You're really fascinating, you're right, Nigel, in the sense that I was at that rally with Emmanuel Macron, and yes, there was joy, of course, about the results, but overwhelmingly there was nowhere near the same fervour, I think, of anticipation, of excitement that you'd seen 5 years ago with Emmanuel Macron. Now, to a large degree, we have to accept that's what happens with second terms. And let's not downplay Emmanuel Macron's victory too much, in the sense that he is the first president to have won re-election in 20 years. He's the first president of the Fifth Republic to have won election while his party is in government. But my word, there is a sense, as you say, that Marine Le Pen, that the right is on the march in France. 5 years ago, she was trounced. That did not happen this time round, even though Emmanuel Macron did better in the end than the polls had suggested. But back 15 years ago, when she first stood, she was on 17% of the vote. She's now on 42% of the vote. And that was reflected, as you say, in Emmanuel Macron's speech, Nigel, in which he fundamentally accepted that there were a lot of people out there who were pretty angry, pretty disenfranchised by where we are with French politics, and that he would argue he wants to be the unity candidate who's going to try and bring France together over the next 5 years. That's going to be an incredibly, I think, difficult task, not least of all because there were lots of his supporters, some polls reckon up to nearly half, 47%, who voted for Emmanuel Macron, not because they like him. Many of French people think he's arrogant, he's out of touch, he represents a globalist elite they do not like, but they voted with him to keep Le Pen out. But there were other people, even on the left, who decided to switch to Marine Le Pen because in the end they wanted to see change. And that is why Emmanuel Macron's second term is going to be so difficult. He's got a cost of living crisis, I bet many Western leaders have, but he's got a country that really doesn't feel comfortable with itself to a large degree. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a struggle, not least of all with these elections coming up in the National Assembly in just a couple of months' time, in which Mélenchon, the Jeremy Corbyn, if you like, of French politics on the left, and Marine Le Pen are expected to do particularly well, to the point where his party, Macron's party, could well lose its majority.
Yeah, and Darren, also very interesting. I mean, you know, the commentariat talk about the far right Marine Le Pen, although I notice her economics is really considerably to the left. But you've also got this large block of Mélenchon voters, as you've just mentioned, sort of a French Jeremy Corbyn, I suppose, is the best way that we could put it. What's really fascinating me, Darren, is it's the youth of France that are turning to Le Pen, that are turning to Mélenchon. And perhaps that explains why Macron and the establishment are frankly quaking in fear at these Assemblée elections.
Yeah, so I was at La République last night, hours after Emmanuel Macron won after that rally at the Eiffel Tower, and there were hundreds of young people out essentially calling Emmanuel Macron a fascist. It caused, as you would expect, and rightly pointed out here in France, lots of protests. There were riot police, lots of bottles thrown at those police officers. They clearly are not terribly happy with the choice that the French electorate has made. I think what's fascinating, though, in order to see off Marine Le Pen, Emmanuel Macron is going to switch, if you like, over the next 5 years, that he's going to appeal much more to left-leaning voters. We're expecting Jean Castex, the French Prime Minister, to resign in the next couple of days, and that Emmanuel Macron's replacement for that will be a left-leaning Prime Minister if he secures that majority. But that all speaks to the fact that there is division. The centre ground has held in France, and it has. And as I say, let's not play down Emmanuel Macron's victory here. You know, the French normally cheer in the leaders and then they chuck them out. They've not done that this time round, but only under enormous pressure from the right and left. And I suspect we saw it with the Gilets jaunes a couple of years ago, the yellow vest protesters who brought large parts of France to a standstill, given some of the reforms that Emmanuel Macron wants to carry out, given how divided France is between those that are poor and those that are wealthy, those that live in cities and those that live in the countryside. I suspect we might see a far more kind of vociferous French people who will take to the streets in the next 5 years to come. And that is why Emmanuel Macron's legacy, I would argue, is far from secure. This is going to be a proper battle, a proper difficult task for the French president in his second term.
Darren, thank you very much indeed for joining us and giving us that analysis. And yeah, I mean, people rioting on the streets of Paris. Whatever next? Now, one of the big reasons that Brexit happened and the global establishment was so shocked was over immigration. And it wasn't illegal immigration. It wasn't people crossing the English Channel in dinghies, because that didn't even start, well, at least not that we knew of, until 2018. Prior to that, people were coming in lorries illegally, but it wasn't getting that much coverage. No, the Brexit vote was about legal immigration. It was about control. It was about reducing numbers. And the interesting thing is, Boris Johnson never really, ever believed in that at all. And we're now beginning to see that in government, because some of the figures that are coming out for 2021 are really pretty extraordinary. 430,000 student visas issued in 2021, and a huge number of them to Chinese students, vast increase in the number of students from Nigeria and elsewhere. And of course, these students, if they start to work, can stay. So it isn't just coming here to study. We've also seen work visas running at over 250,000, and family visas massively up too. Excuse me. We don't yet know the final figures for net migration in 2021. But what we do know is we've opened the door to a very large number of people from Hong Kong. We've opened the door to a significant number of people from Afghanistan. We've opened the door, in the end, once we get through the red tape, to large numbers of people from Ukraine. But actually, the points-based system the government has put in place has lowered standards to such a degree that we're frankly now open to the world. And I think we're very likely in 21 or 22 to see record numbers of people coming to settle in this country. It is a huge change. And to add to all of that, Boris Johnson was in India last week, and he said, in terms of putting a trade deal together, we have a massive shortage in the UK. We're short to the tune of hundreds of thousands in our economy. And yes, we're short of people with IT skills. we're short of people with all sorts of trades and skills, as we seem to encourage sending off hundreds of thousands of young people every year to get degrees in social sciences. There are those in London and in that building behind me, those who write for newspapers like The Times, who think it's marvellous, absolutely marvellous, that we've got this open, liberal, as they see it, immigration policy. And what really thrills them is the British public now are not saying in polls that immigration is an important issue. And I'll tell you why. They think it's been dealt with by Brexit. When they wake up to the fact that under Boris Johnson and in Brexit Britain, net migration is going up and not down, there'll be a very big price to pay. But it's something that has never worried this Prime Minister one little bit. The one thing I did like over the weekend was Jacob Rees-Mogg. Fantastic, going into that empty office in Whitehall, leaving a note saying, "I'm sorry that I missed you." Rees-Mogg going to war with work from home. Now, there are lots of people, again, behind me, who will tell you people working from home are so much more productive. I don't believe a word of it. I think it's also very unfair to young people, because young people need to get into an office, into a work environment and meet others. And into all of this, we now learn that the DVLA have accepted there are 200,000 applications that have waited for longer than 10 weeks. And this is to assess their medical condition as to whether they can continue to drive. And this will not be normalised until September. Well, I'm sorry, that isn't good enough. It's putting huge strain too on GPs and many others. It's costing people not just their chance to go on holiday, it's costing people in many cases actually their livelihoods. Now, I'm not saying all of the problems are because 2/3 of the DVLA are working from home, but I think it's contributed to that, don't you? Right. I was pretty appalled over the weekend by the French and Germans. We now learn that despite the arms embargo to Russia, since 2014, both France and Germany have been selling weapons to Russia, but under the guise that they're intended for civilian use. And if you think about it, these people are supposed to be our partners in NATO. We're supposed to work together in an atmosphere of trust. It would appear with both of those countries that is pretty impossible. But one piece of really good news today, and I think we need it very, very badly, is we're on the verge of Elon Musk's bid for Twitter being accepted by the board. And goodness me, do we need a different voice in social media? Because we learned over the weekend that Google are going to put some new safety factors on the phone to try and make it more difficult for us to use words like landlord. No, I'm not making this up. Quite what is wrong with landlord or landlady, I don't know, but it really is Orwellian thought speech. Google controlling our minds, controlling what we say in a desire to make language more inclusive. So I really hope and pray this comes to fruition. I hope today that Musk gets control of Twitter, and yes, it might be a bit chaotic, but if it genuinely becomes, once again, what it was designed to be, a platform for free speech, well, that could only be, in my view, a very, very good thing. It is, as I say, very, very much needed. One or two more thoughts from you, the viewers. I asked the question, are you changing your lifestyles in line with bills going through the roof? One viewer says, like many, I am struggling. When will the government step in and help us? Well, there's a limit to what government can do, but there are things they could do. Barry says, it comes to something when even the supermarkets slash their prices so people can afford to eat. Well, Barry, how much they really have slashed their prices remains to be seen. Sarah says, mine isn't, but I know plenty who are struggling. I fear it's only going to go and get worse. Well, I have to say, I still don't think that it's the stuff of us rioting and taking to the streets. I just don't think that's our way, but we're certainly heading, millions of families are heading for very, very tough times. Now, somebody who's been through some good times and some tough times and is very much on the way back, former TV personality, all-round celebrity, Daniela Westbrook will join me in a moment for Talking Pints.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's Talking Pints. I'm not in the GB News Tavern. I'm here in Westminster with this amazing view behind me, and I'm joined by TV star, all-round celebrity, and somebody who's seen a few ups and downs in life. I'm joined by Daniela Westbrook. Daniela,
cheers.
Welcome to the programme.
Thank you. I've got a cup of tea, me, so yeah.
That's fine. We don't force people to drink. But the idea is that it's like
relaxed,
having a conversation over a cup of tea or a pint, as people do. It's very interesting. You know, your sort of upbringing was really quite sort of, almost quite middle class, wasn't it? Horsey.
Yeah, I was very horsey, yeah. We're not really middle class people, but I was very horsey. But then, back then in Essex, it was a lot more rural than what it is now. You know, London's moving out, isn't it? So it's becoming less suburban. But yeah, I did have horses and stuff like that growing up. Not my own, but I rode horses.
And this burning ambition to be famous.
To be an actor.
Yeah.
I loved the theatre. I just loved theatre. I was obsessed from the first time I ever saw Bugsy Malone, Jodie Foster. I was just obsessed with acting, and you know, the kids being adults in that movie was great. And I just wanted to get into theatre and get into TV. And of course, back then, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s, it was unheard of, really. And my mum worked at the Balbon as a bunny girl, and she served a lot of the great stars, the Stones, the Who, and people say she had good contacts, so they put her in touch with Sylvia Youngs, and that's off where I went there.
So was it to act well, or was it to be famous? Was it both?
It was to act. I just wanted to act. In fact, I had no intentions of really about fame. I just wanted to do theatre. I'd actually applied to go to Strasbourg in New York, and ended up getting, before I even got a letter back from them, I ended up getting EastEnders about 4 weeks before. So, yeah, I had no intention, I just wanted to act, and then the other stuff really gets in the way, fame. And
But EastEnders was a huge break, wasn't it? Because,
it was.
I mean, what do you think about that? You know, 1990, there are hardly any TV channels.
4 channels. It was easy to be famous back then, wasn't it?
Well, it was, in a way it was,
Yeah,
but there were 4 channels, there was no internet.
No.
And
no mobile phones.
And no mobile. Well, there was the odd one, but there weren't very many. No, you're absolutely right.
They were huge.
Yeah, big bricks. Yeah. So it was a massive break, wasn't it?
It was huge. It was huge pressure, and you know, and it was. And we only went out twice a week in an omnibus on a Sunday. So we used to get rehearsal days and tech runs and producers runs, and now there's none of that. Everything's so fast paced in TV, as you well know nowadays.
Oh no, I mean, people in soaps. I mean, it was.
Oh, but if you can work on a soap, you can work anywhere, because you have to. It's like doing live. It's, you know, you really do learn on your feet. It's very fast paced.
No, it was a fantastic break for you. Talking of soaps, Bill Roache who appeared in the first Coronation Street.
Yes, he did.
1960.
He's fabulous, isn't he?
And he's just turning 90. Did you see that?
He's 90.
90. He's 90.
Doesn't look 90 at all, does he?
He's still acting in Coronation
And he's still
Street.
fabulous. He's still
And
got
he's
big
still good.
storylines.
I mean, amazing. I guess the soaps are not quite as important as they were. And I know you sort of came in and you went out of EastEnders, several times, and some very dramatic parts and roles that you played on EastEnders. But it kind of, that fame that you had allowed you, when you were away from EastEnders, to do modelling on a scale.
I did lots of different things. I think now you have to be able to do everything, reality TV and everything, to keep up and keep current. But, you say soaps aren't as important as they are. They're a big part of people's everyday lives. A lot of people, at home, they watch their Emmerdale, their Corrie, or their EastEnders, Hollyoaks, whatever, Doctors, whatever it may be. I think I've covered them all there. And that's a big part of people's lives. They play, you play a big part of producing and bringing out storylines of big issues that go on in people's everyday homes, whether that's mental health or cancer or rape or all different types of things, abuse. There's a lot that soaps cover, and I think sometimes we've been lost a little bit, the soap opera actors and the soap world, because of reality TV and other things that are going on. I think soaps have sort of been played down quite a lot, but they are still very important to people.
No, I get that, and it's part of their lives. But for you, of course, reaching this great level of fame that, honour them, as we say, before
infamous
other TV, fame, infamy. I mean, but you clearly, did you spiral downwards because you had some very bad years?
I had bad drug issues, didn't I?
You had bad drug issues.
Problems, yeah.
Were those drug issues there before you became well known?
They were there, but they weren't as heightened because I didn't have as much money as I did when I was obviously working on a big show. So, I already had issues, but a lot of, preconceived issues as well. But they became heightened, and obviously media, and really the media saved me, if anything, more than once.
What, by offering you a way back?
No, not by offering me a way back, by putting me all over the papers, by exposing me in a sense, because I had to do something with my life. Otherwise I would have ended up dead. So I have to, for every half empty, half full, for every down there's an up, as they say, pardon the pun. But no, for me, I think in a way, just being exposed by everything, you've got to look at the positive in it.
When you've got to the situation that you were, and obviously taking quite large amounts.
Oh yeah, I was trying to kill myself, basically, wasn't
drugs. What in the end turns it round? Because
only I can turn it around.
I've had people on. I had a lady on this show whose son died of drug addiction. She's now trying to set up a charity and help families who just can't comprehend,
of course,
how their son or daughter's got there. How in the end did you turn it around?
My children couldn't comprehend it. My parents, my mother, nearly killed my mum. Oh God, the distress it put her under, and worrying every night she was going to get a call that I'd be dead somewhere, or didn't speak to me for 3 years. I just went off crazy,
So do you just sort of one day say, I've got to do something?
No, I just got into somebody put me in a meeting, I got where I needed to be, and I think I was done. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and for me, that's where you need to be. I mean, you can't do it for your kids, you can't do it for a job, you can't do it, because then you're just faking it to make it. It's always going to come back to you. If you don't work a 12-step program in your life and you don't put your recovery first, you're not going to stay well, but you can't fake that. You can't. You're either in or you're out. It's it's just the way it is.
You've also talked about mental health issues.
I had plenty of those.
And you said, you talked about
bipolar,
borderline
psychosis,
personality disorder, bipolar, a bit of paranoia.
Yeah, I've got psychosis. I have psychosis. I take medication for stuff, and that's all brought on by childhood trauma of being abused, and obviously not by my family, but being abused, but also as well from drug addiction. So psychosis, cocaine gives you psychosis. It's a common fact, and that doesn't leave you. So, you do get side effects from everything, don't you?
And yet, I think, Class A drugs are
horrific.
Available on the streets of London.
I'm sure they're available everywhere.
Literally everywhere. Yeah, literally everywhere. If we wanted to get hold of Class A drugs, we could do so in a few minutes.
Please don't.
No, I'm not saying we will.
I don't think it'd be very good for you, right?
No, I'm not. I don't want to, I promise you. But what I'm saying is it's massively available.
Yeah,
it's more easily available than it ever was before.
I think so, yeah. It's the same as guns and knives, apparently, now in London. That's, it's a commodity, isn't it?
So what do we do? What do we do to try and warn people off drugs?
I don't know. Do you know what? I just have no words, because I don't know, because everybody's situation, although it's similar, is different. and everybody's reasoning behind it and why they're doing it is different. But all I know is if anybody's struggling, that you just go online and go to, you know, even Narcotics Anonymous, you know, one of the outreaches and just get into a meeting,
And you're going to get involved with some counselling yourself, yeah?
Yeah, I'm trying to do something at the moment, trying to do some counselling. In fact, my son and I are talking about writing a book. I'm doing my new book at the moment, but we're also talking about doing a book about my relapse that I had a good few years back. And I'm going to do a chapter, and he's going to do a chapter, only a small book, and the proceeds will go towards a charity like that lady you was just explaining, to help other people. And basically it'll be, from my point of view, the relapse, the downfall, why it happened, and then my son, or my children, or mostly my son, will do a chapter saying how it was for him after seeing me clean for 14 years. Suddenly I just changed one day. And then how my process and my journey of being in the relapse and then coming out the other side, and we'll do half a chapter each. Only maybe 6 or 7 chapters, but it'll just be like a small book for, and then family members will be aware that don't know about addiction, that have no clue about it, and don't know, that blame themselves or whatever, try everything, and then the person that's in trouble can see it from my point of view, because they'll be like me, the addict.
Do you find it hard to talk about it or not?
No, I don't. I don't find it hard, because if I can't be of service and talk about it to other people, then I can't stay well myself, and then I can't help other people. I can't not have this platform and not help others. It would be absurd not to do that. You just have to.
And other health issues you've had, you had a cancer issue as well.
Yeah, and I had an operation last week, a biopsy 2 weeks ago on my face, so that's still a little bit sore, but we're getting there.
That's reconstructive.
That's all reconstructive, but that's exciting though.
Yeah.
Because I'll be getting my health back as well. But yeah, I had a cancer scare, I had cancer cells, had all that done and removed as well. But I think that's quite normal in women my age. You know, I'm nearly 50, I'm 48. The menopause, one thing and another, your body's changing. It's, you know, you just have to be aware of yourself all the time and check yourself, check your health. It's not until I've got to the age I am, the last few years, that I realise how much I diced in my health and how important your health actually is.
Well, you're lucky to be here, really, aren't you?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
I mean, these were levels of abuse that were pretty horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, shockingly horrendous, you know.
You said that you take medication for psychosis things that you've suffered. Do you generally feel happier in life now?
Do you know what I really do? I've got quite a bit of an old hippie in my old age. I've learned to do a lot of yoga, I do a lot of meditation. I've just looked at different routes. I eat well, I do, you know, surround myself with very few people. Although I know a lot of people, I surround myself with few people. And I learnt the power of the word no, which was nice. So I don't say yes to going to every event or doing everything, or if I don't fancy doing something, I just politely say no.
And what about that big ambition that you had as a young girl, that you wanted to be an actor? Do you still want to be an actor?
Yeah, I still want to be an actor. Yeah, I still want to be an actor, but I want to help people, and there's other things I want to do as well, you know, it's things I'm interested in. And after my operations, I want to come back to work, but properly full-time, but I really want to do theatre. You know, I was speaking actually on GBNews, a different show, on Marks, the other day, and I said, I'd rather do a weekly rep for £500 a week or £300 a week than be on a show that I hate that's toxic for £5 a week, because I know where it can lead me. I'd just rather be happy.
So treading the boards, this is where you want to. This is where you want to be, and that's real acting, I guess, isn't it? Because you've got a live audience.
I love live theatre
in front of you.
And I like those really small theatres as well that are in like little old pubs and things as well, like really small theatres. And it doesn't have to be, you know, big West End shows. I just want to act and do nice things.
So the ambition's different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, you know, my needs are less as I'm getting older as well. So, you know, I've seen a lot of the world, I've lived in lots of places, and I just want to do what makes me happy and have the time to spend. Hopefully my children will give me grandchildren soon. So hopefully
But you're still quite young, really.
Well, yeah, sort of. We'll say that when we get to our age.
I think I'm 10 years older than you, and I feel very young, and I've got loads of stuff I want to do.
Young, but I'm like, I don't need to be as ambitious as I used to be.
No, but to get back to acting.
Yeah, just to be happy and doing bits and pieces would be lovely.
And no more relapses?
God, no, one day at a time.
And what caused that?
Just a marriage breakdown. I think as well that I wasn't working my programme. You know, I was 14 years clean, but I was turning up to meetings and doing stuff, but I wasn't working a programme. I wasn't working the steps. I wasn't sponsoring people. I wasn't doing chairs. I just wasn't. I was going through the motions and I wasn't being real. And eventually that leads to relapse. You know, and I was 14. It took me 7 years into a 14-year recovery before I could say I would never touch another drug. And there we go, 7 years after that, within a week of deciding to relapse, I was full-blown back drinking and taking cocaine. And I wouldn't even know where to find it. But like you said, if you're ever bent on doing something, you'll go out and you'll find whatever you need to find.
Well, I don't know. I really wish you well, and I hope that you can. I hope that you can, use your bad experiences to warn other people, young people in particular, that it's not a great route to go down. But somehow it still seems very attractive to them, doesn't it?
It does, and the worst thing of it is we have no help in this country either for rehabilitation centres and things. So my dream would be actually to pair up with somebody and get some free rehabs going somewhere and get people in and seen a lot faster, and at least some help.
You go and do that, please. And thank you for joining me on Talking Pints.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Very good. Cheers. Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Daniela. Very good. We've got a couple of minutes left on programme, and of course it is Barrage the Farage. You send your questions in. Let me have a go here. Rosie asks, do celebrities and sports stars need more support while in the spotlight? I should have kept her here, shouldn't I? I think the problem is, and we've discussed this with several of our guests on Talking Pints, that suddenly you can go from being nowhere to a huge amount of fame, in some cases an awful lot of money, and a lot of bad, vulture-like people around you that will take you in the wrong directions. But, how do you set up a network for people who become celebrities? I'm just not sure I know the answer to that. Ryan asks me, do you think Trump could be back on Twitter soon? Well, Trump must have done so much good for Twitter commercially. And it's odd, isn't it, that Twitter was happy to be a loss-making company that offended so many people with conservative opinions. And Musk, I have to say, I was unsure about Musk until a couple of years ago, but I can see this guy has just got the most extraordinary flair. And if this goes through and he gets Twitter, who's to say he won't turn it around into being something that is hugely profitable? And Donald Trump being back on that platform would be a great part of it and would give huge entertainment to many, many people in the world. Mary asks me, do you think Putin is blackmailing Germany? Well, yeah, Germany have put themselves in an absolutely impossible position. And I have to say that in terms of economic sanctions, Putin still, in many, many ways, has a stronger hand of cards than Germany does. All he has to do is turn off that tap, and the whole of German industry and over half of German houses would lose power and heating, respectively. So they put themselves in a terrible position. Mrs. Merkel's chancellorship will be looked at as being a total disaster, not the success the globalists all led us to believe. Do you think the EU are becoming apathetic towards Ukraine, Paul asks. Paul, I just think that the EU have gone for constant expansion. I think it's been a mistake, but I think they realise with Ukraine that it would be a massive, massive problem for them. And Ukraine surely should want to be a strong, independent country, especially after the experiences that it's been through. David asks, what does the Macron victory mean for the UK? It means we have a French president who absolutely loathes Brexit, can't stand the British, particularly the English. We'll get nothing back on fishing, nothing back on Northern Ireland, nothing back on cross-channel migrants. He will be the proverbial pain. He does not like us. Anyway, that's enough from me today. It'll be Mark Stein taking over in just a few moments' time. I'm back with you tomorrow at 7 p.m. First, though, let's get the all-important weather.
Good evening. Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Pretty chilly tonight, so a fresh start tomorrow. Many of us having a dry day and some places having a sunny day, but others will be quite cloudy. High pressure is in control of our weather, but it's sitting up to the north, and around it the winds are coming down from the north, hence why it is going to be pretty chilly overnight. Not too strong, the winds, though, and as we have clear skies for the majority, that will allow those temperatures to tumble. We will see increasing cloud over northern Scotland, a few showers here and there across the far northeast, but for most it will be a dry night. Temperatures, as I said, will be falling away. 3 or 4, that's towns and cities. Rural spots not far off freezing, with some places dipping a touch below. So a cold start to Tuesday, but for many, a dry and a bright start. Quite a bit of sunshine around. Quite cloudy over eastern Scotland. That cloud will spread through central Scotland, northeast England, with a few showers likely here in the morning. That cloud thickening as it pushes south into parts of the